Hey, it's Mr. Saltano, and in this video we're going to learn how to multiply and divide with scientific notation. So firstly, let's talk about multiplying. So you want to remember our vocabulary from the last time is our coefficients, which is our number before the multiplier. So this is a 2 coefficient of 4 over here, and our exponent, which is our power of 10, right? So in order to multiply coefficients, it's actually a very simple process. The first thing that you do is you multiply the coefficients the way you would normally. So in this case, we're going to do a 2 times a 4. These are the coefficients. And you add the exponents. That's the part that's a little counterintuitive. So we would take those powers of 10 and add them, and the product that we got would be the result of our scientific notation math. Another way to remember this is to think MADD, M-A-D-D. So if you want to multiply scientific notation, you add the exponents. Okay, so if we're looking at our example, what do you think you would get keeping in mind those rules? So what do you think you would get if you multiply this scientific notation number with this scientific notation number? So what you would get is you would multiply the coefficients and get 8, and you would add the exponents to get 20. So your final answer would be 8 times 10 to the 20th. So that would be your final answer. It's as simple as that. That's how you multiply scientific notation. Now, what about if we want to divide? Well, it just runs the opposite. If we want to divide, we just divide the coefficients normally. So in this case, it would just be 2 divided by 1. But then you subtract the exponent, so you can think of it as this. To divide scientific notation, you have to subtract the exponents. So in this case we do a 23 minus 10. So again, if we look at this, we would do 2 divided by 1 is going to give us 2, and then 23 minus 10 is going to give us 13. So our final answer is 2 times 10 to the 13th. That's our final answer. Now, something very important about this, calculator tips. If you're going to put this in your calculator, you must use parentheses or use another tip I'm about to show you. If you do not use parentheses, this is what will happen. And you can even try this at home if you want to, just to prove my point. If you don't use parentheses, your calculator will say it's this. Now remember, we said that it's 2 times 10 to the 13th, which is correct. The calculator, if you don't use parentheses, will say that it's 2 times 10 to the 33rd. Now, why is that? Well, your calculator is very smart, right? It does a lot of math for you, but your calculator follows PEMDAS. And so what your calculator does is it will actually say, okay, 2 times 10 to the 23rd divided by 1 times 10 to the 10th. So it's going to multiply this and then divide both of those by 1, and then it's going to multiply the whole thing by this number, which is not correct, right? So you must include those parentheses if you want to get the correct answer on a quiz or test or anything really. So that the answer that they gave us is not the correct answer. Now there's a shortcut to do this actually if you get good at it. I recommend doing this method. It's a lot simpler. You don't have to press so many parentheses buttons, but it's whatever you're comfortable with you want to use. This is called the EE button, and it's found on the calculators that we're going to be using in class. It's highlighted in red here. And what the EE button does is it's the same thing as saying times 10 to the. So if you press that EE button, you're saying to the calculator times 10 to the. So for example, again, E equals times 10 to some power. So for example, if I wanted to do 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, I would type in the calculator 6.02. I would press the EE button, and then press the 23. That's all I would have to do. No carets, no parentheses, no anything. This button is a quick shortcut. On the calculator screen, it's going to say 6.02 E23. That's fine. As long as you're pressing the EE button, and it stands for times 10 to the. I recommend practicing with this actually because it takes some practice to get to the hang of this, but it is a lot easier once you're good at it. It takes a lot less time. So for example, if we wanted to do this problem now, instead of writing 2.0 times 10 to the 23rd, we would write 2.0 EE23 in the calculator button, right? And then we would write 1 EE10 for this other left number, and then we'd get the correct answer that way. This way we'll actually divide properly. So that's a good shortcut. Okay, so try to figure out this problem. How would you solve this problem keeping in mind the multiplier rules? Okay, so what you would get for this one is 4 times 10 to the 20th because 2 times 2 is 4 and 8 plus 12 is 20. Try out this one. What did you get for this one? Be careful with the negative. Watch what that means. So in this case, we would get 9 times 10 to the second. So if you look, 3 times a 3 will give you 9. And a 4 plus a negative 6 will actually give you a negative 2. So be careful with those positives and negatives. What about this one? What would you get for this one? So this would be 6 times 10 to the 25th. What about this one? This one's a little bit trickier. So in this one, it would be 2 times 4 is 8. And then a negative 8 plus a negative 2 is going to give you a negative 10. So a negative plus a negative is going to give you more negative. Okay, so what you would get for this one is you'd have to put that in. So 6 times a 2 is 12, and a 6 times 1/2 is 3, so that would give you 15, right? So this times this would give you 15, and you can always use a calculator for this. And then a negative 5 plus a 1 will give you a negative 4. So here's the answer you would get for that. Now, is this the final answer? So stop and think about this. Is this the answer we should have for scientific notation? No, this is not the right answer. This answer needs to be adjusted in order to be in proper scientific notation. Remember, the rule for scientific notation is that the number must be between 1 and 9, and this is a 15. Doesn't follow the rule. So in order to fix that, we have to adjust it, right? And remember that in order to adjust it, we need to make, in this case, our coefficient smaller by 1 step. And so our exponent has to get larger by 1 step. So what is that going to mean? Think about what that final answer would be. So that would be 1.5 actually, times 10 to the negative third, because we went larger from a negative, right? Our coefficient went down, our exponent went up, and to go up means to be less negative. What do you think of this one? Well, see if you can get the final answer for this one, the final answer. So double check all your work. So your first step, and it's okay to do this in a few steps, your first step would be to get the 36 times 10 to the 25. But then you'd have to adjust that for your second step. I actually recommend doing 2 steps for these, just in case you accidentally make a mistake. So in this case, you'd get 3.6 times 10 to the 26, so that would be your correct final answer. Our coefficient had to get smaller, and our exponent got bigger by 1 step. Now we're dividing, so think about the division rules. Remember that we take our coefficients and we divide them normally, so 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. We take our exponents and we subtract them, so 19 minus 10 is going to be 9. So here's our final answer. Take a minute to try out this one. What do you think? And again, feel free to use the calculator. Just remember, you have to either use the parentheses or the EE button to make this work properly, so try that one out. Okay, so we have that, and that is in proper scientific notation. Try out this one. Okay, so this one, actually, we have to adjust it again. So our first answer for this should be 0.5 times 10 to the 6th, because 4 divided by 8 is a half, right, which is 0.5. But it's not proper scientific notation, so we have to adjust this in order to get 5 times 10 to the 5th. So be careful. And then try out this one. So this would give us 0.5 again. And then 20 minus a negative 10 will actually give us 30. So 0.5 times 10 to the 30th, and then we have to adjust that. We make our coefficient bigger, our exponent gets smaller. And then try out this last example. That's what you would get for that. This is the hardest one. Okay. And that's all we have for math with scientific notation. I do recommend going back through and trying these on your own. We're going to try them in class, but more practice is always good. So thank you for watching. And remember, chemistry is everywhere.